Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Please make sure that you subscribe to us on all of the major podcast platforms. We are on all of them. Also, jump on over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel over there, because I'm certain that you not only want to listen to all of this magnificent glory, but you want to see it as well. So make sure that you jump over to YouTube and like the podcast and the videos over there as well, please. Today, a big day for us here at The Right Side. I'm really honored and happy to have Pete Mundo with us. Pete is the morning talk show host on KCMO Talk Radio. That's 103.7 FM and 710 AM here in Kansas City, every Monday through Friday, 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the morning. In my opinion, one of the best conservative talk show hosts in the country, quite frankly. Pete, thank you very much for agreeing to come on the show with me.
Doug, anytime. It's great to be here with you. I love the setup you've got here.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. I've been listening to you for a long time. I understand that you're from, now, am I right? You're from New York originally? Is that home?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. Yeah. And how did you end up here? And have you decided to make Kansas City home?
It is absolutely home for us. So I worked, my first radio job, Doug, was in Oklahoma, and that's where I first became familiar with Kansas City and loved the city and never thought I'd necessarily work there, but said it's a great city. If I end up there, that'd be cool. We went to New York City for 5 years. I freelanced at Fox News and CBS and a couple other places, and just wore down on me and the wife and everything else. And we were making great money, but felt like our wheels were turning, not sure where the money was going. And it was going to the government, so it was time to get the heck out. Yeah. And Kansas City came up on the radar and got this job 2.5 years ago, and we've loved it for every minute. So we live out in Olathe, Kansas now. We were living in downtown KCMO for a little bit, and we have a 19-month-old daughter here, and she is loving it as well. So we hope it's home for a very long time, Doug. It's been absolutely great.
Good. Well, hey, we're neighbors. I live in Olathe as well, so good to know.
There you go.
How about it? I appreciate everything that you do for the discussion, the national and the local discussion with regards to politics and, news of the day and so forth. I want to touch with you for the time that we have on 4 key points. One, I want to just briefly do a gut check with you on the presidential election, the 2 candidates, your assessment just briefly on them. I kind of want to talk to you about this mob mentality that's going on in the United States. Get your feel for the congressional race here in Kansas and Missouri, and then some of your thoughts on the governor's race as well. So if that's okay with you, let's dig in.
Let's do it.
All right. So the presidential election, I want to get your take on the whole Joe Biden dementia issue. I mean, so when he admitted that he's constant, in his own words, I'm constantly being evaluated for cognitive decline. What struck me was, I wonder if that was the Democratic hierarchy telling him to say that, so that would lead to a possible step for an intervention later. Joe, you've had a great career. You've had, an illustrious, great career, but, it's time to step aside. Is there any sense to that? Is he really their guy, Pete, or is there a chance that he may not be?
So let's say 3 months ago, Doug, I thought maybe that could have been possible, right? Because that would have been the time. You got a pandemic, everyone's laying low, there's no rallying, there's no events. You slide Joe out the side door. He doesn't know what day of the week it is anyway and what he's running for. You replace him, and everyone's happy and hunky-dory, and you can go further to the left. Today, I don't think that's likely. I mean, we got 100 days to the election. I don't think they're going to do it. What I think they will, they're going to protect Joe at every turn. And that's why you're starting to hear things like, oh, Joe shouldn't debate Trump unless Trump releases his tax returns or something stupid like that. So I think Joe's the guy, and their hope is to get him across the finish line while exposing him as little as possible to who he actually is and how limited his cognitive abilities are. And then they know once they get him in office, he's just a face. That's it. They're pulling the strings. You got the Obama people behind the fence pulling the strings anyway. So they don't really care if Joe's in the Oval Office. He's going to be a puppet anyway. They've realized that. They got what they want. So now it's protecting him to get him across the finish line.
Good thoughts, and well said. What about the polls? Obviously they've always, we saw this in 2016. Trump's at a disadvantage. My opinion is that, look, the vast majority of people out there are not going to put a button on their coat. They're not going to put a bumper sticker on their car, a sign on their yard for Trump, because they're afraid of the mob. They don't want their house or their car to be vandalized. God forbid somebody throws a brick through your living room window just because you've got a Trump sign in your yard. I still think that the vast majority of people, between the coasts, as I say, support the guy, support the president. What, from all the people that you talk to, everything that you read, I know you do a lot of that. What's your gut check on what is the president's chance, and what does he have to continue to do or start doing?
Well, I think it's there's a lot to it there, Doug. And it starts with remembering what happened in 2016, right? Donald Trump won because of 80,000 votes in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Donald Trump got fewer votes than Mitt Romney did in the state of Wisconsin, but he won the state. What does that tell you? That tells you that Hillary Clinton woefully underperformed in the state of Wisconsin and across the board for that matter. That doesn't take anything away from Trump. He did what he had to do. He made Hillary Clinton even more unlikable than she already was, and he won the election. He deserves full credit for it. I'm a supporter of the president. But I do think he's got a bit of an uphill climb here. I realize there's a silent majority. I think it's out there for sure. And I don't believe the polls that show him down 10 to 15 points. But I think he's got to close a gap here. And I think he's got to do it with suburban voters who may not like him, but have to realize that if you want to hold America into what it's been for 250 years in some capacity, he's your guy. And that's got to be the pitch here from him, from the campaign. I think that this week, the press conferences they've done have been outstanding. He's kept it, about a half hour. Yep. It's been very professional. And that's where I think you get the suburban housewife to say, I can go vote for that guy. Because I think a lot of them, it's not about the issues. It's about the emotions. It's about how they feel. It's about not liking Trump. And, whatever, that's your prerogative. But in the end, you're not picking a president based on who you like. It's not a popularity contest. It's who is going to do the best job to preserve the American values that we all hold dear. And to me, bar none, that's Donald Trump. He's got to get Biden on the debate stage. We talked about that a minute ago. That does concern me because Trump on the debate stage, I think, will eviscerate Joe. And he needs that reminder to, all the American people of, hey, look at the two options you got and tell me which one you think is better. So I think right now, an election today, I would be concerned that Trump would lose. But he's got time to make this thing up. He was down at this point in 2016 by a few points. He closed the gap. I think he can do it again.
I'm with you, especially about the debate scenario that you laid out. He's got to get Joe on the stage, and we've got to get those Trump rallies, I think, going back again. Also, what in Tulsa, he made a comment that resonated with me quite a bit. It was frightening. It was an excellent comment, but it was frightening on one hand as well. Joe Biden is a Trojan horse for socialism. Does socialism resonate with the voter? Do they give a hoot about that or not?
See, I think that the definition of socialism has been so manipulated, because of the education system, because of just a lack of historical context and knowledge. Socialism today to people is, more safety nets, more social nets, universal basic income. People are redefining socialism. I think the president is right, and I think that that's something he should keep pushing. But I think Joe Biden is, in many ways, a trial run for some of these more far-left ideological ideas with AOC's Green New Deal, things like that. I mean, he has come out in support of elements of that. And that leads me to believe when the guy's in office, and he's even got less cognitive ability than he has today, if you have Nancy Pelosi with majority in the House, which I think she'll have no matter what, and if, God forbid, they flip the Senate, and then blow out the Philippites out of me, Joe will sign whatever's put on his desk because they'll tell him to do it. So I think it's a fair comment by the president, and it is, to me, one of the most concerning things about this election. Absolutely.
All right, turning then towards kind of the mob mentality that we're seeing on TV, I have said that, the mob really represents a portion of the electoral base of the New Democratic Socialist Party, as I call them. I don't think it's their entire base. I think it's a portion of it, but an important one because it gets a lot of media attention. So these cities that are on fire, they're to a T, all of them, including the mayor of Kansas City, has come out, I believe he came out against Operation Legend. What's your take on Operation Legend, and why in the world wouldn't they want to support that thing?
So the mayor tried to kind of straddle the line here. What he supports Operation Legend if it stays as federal law enforcement officials trying to help solve unsolved homicides. He does not want a situation where you have police officers, federal law enforcement officers out and about in the streets arresting people like what you have in Portland. thing is, in Portland, you've had 56 straight nights of no longer protests, of just flat out anarchy. Just look at the videos all over social media. Now, Kansas City doesn't have that problem, right? They don't have that problem to their credit as of today. So it's really a moot point. But the letter that was put together by mayors all over the country was the mayors of Seattle, Portland, Mayor Lucas in Kansas City, Chicago, Atlanta, and D.C., basically saying they don't want federal help for basic law enforcement. If I were the mayor of Kansas City, Mayor Lucas, I would not have signed that letter because, frankly, putting myself into a group with Ted Wheeler in Portland, who has made a fool of himself, Lori Lightfoot in Chicago, that's not really a group I want to be involved with, Doug. And I don't want to go to a cocktail hour with those people. Never mind be on the same letter with them to Bill Barr. So I thought that was a mistake. And I also thought it made no sense because those cities are dealing with issues we are not. Thank goodness we aren't. So I saw no reason to kind of latch on to that group, but the mayor did decide to go down that road.
What about the mayor and his director of health? Is that, I'm talking about
Rex Archer?
Archer, yes, Dr. Archer. He seems to be, at least in my observation on social media, very political, in his posts and what he says about the president and his approach to this whole thing. Is he is he a fair guy?
No, he's not at all. He is, he's been in the job for 20 some odd years. He's a lifelong bureaucrat with the KCMO Health Department. The mayor can't fire him. People say to me all the time, why doesn't the mayor fire Archer? He can't. The city manager has to fire him. And right now, Kansas City has an interim city manager. So that's not, if you're the interim anything, you're not going to make a move in the middle of a pandemic, in fairness, and fire your health director, no matter how political he gets. But yeah, the health director has put on Twitter that President Trump should be put in prison for the rest of his life because of how he's handled the pandemic. And then this guy wants to go out and say to all of Kansas City, hey, here's what you need to be doing, red, white, and blue. It doesn't work that way. I mean, he's his own worst enemy. I think he's completely aloof. And you know what? He wonders why certain people don't want to buy in. He's dug his own grave.
Right. Or I'm right there with you on that one. Last one about Mayor Lucas. Do you think that this famous viral photograph of him at the Lake of the Ozarks is going to have any lasting effect on him?
I don't, Doug. It was great for talk radio for a couple of days, but because here's the thing, he kind of pissed off the left and the right. The left was like, I can't believe you do that without a mask, and how dare you, and where's your mask? And the right was like, this guy's been telling us to wear a mask, and he can't wear a mask. So he kind of pissed off everybody, but I don't think it has political legs. No one's going to go to the polls in 3 years and say, I'm on the fence about this Lucas guy, but that picture without a mask really put me over the top. I don't think so. I think it's here and it's gone.
I'm with you. Yeah, for sure. That's the news cycle is so short on things like that. It'll be long forgotten. All right. In the time that we have remaining, just a few quick touch points on some of the races that are of interest to us. The United States Congress here locally with Mike Beeler, Adrian Foster, Amanda Atkins, and Sarah Hart-Weir. What's your take on that race? Who do you think's got the inside track to the win?
Boy, this race, I mean, I've got so many people asking about this 3rd district in Kansas, and I have no read on it. It's crazy, but I think that right now, if you told me that I think Atkins is the front runner, followed by Sarah Hart-Weir, and then Beeler and Foster, I think you could flip them either way at 3 or 4. But right now, if you said, hey, any of these people will win, I think the only one I might be surprised by, and I would say mildly surprised by, is Beeler. It would not shock me if he pulled it off, but I would be mildly surprised just because he got into the race later. He's mostly self-funding himself here during this thing. So he doesn't have maybe the organization that the other 3 have. So it would surprise me a little bit, but it wouldn't shock me. I mean, whatever the outcome is, I don't think the winner's getting more than probably 33%. I think it's probably what the winner gets in this thing. Because I think it's going to be a lot of people, I think especially the 3 women have a base of probably 15 to 20%. The question is, of the 25 to 30% undecided vote, which is the number that I've heard in the district right now, what do those undecided voters do on election day? I mean, that sways a lot of elections, but I think especially in this one, it'll play a huge role.
Whoever wins, Pete, do any of them stand a chance to beat Sharice Davids?
It's going to be very tough, very tough. I mean, she's sitting on a couple $1 million. She is not touched by anybody in the local media. She gets softballed to death by most people in the Kansas City media. They protect her. She has been protected by Nancy Pelosi. She knows, when to vote against certain things. Pelosi gives the blessing, appear like you're a moderate. She's not a moderate. She appears and pretends to be one, knowing what the district is as a swing district, but it's not who she is. But it doesn't matter. You got $2 million. The Republicans going to come out of this thing with not a lot of money once they get through the primaries. It's an uphill climb. It's a tough year. And I think it's going to be a very, very, very difficult seat to flip. I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's going to be very tough, Doug.
Interesting. All right. United States Senate from the state of Kansas, Chris Kobach, Roger Marshall, Pat Roberts, the current senator, has endorsed Marshall. What's your take on this one?
I don't think it really moves the needle. I don't. I think that the people that would have been impacted by this or, think this is a big deal are probably already Marshall voters already. Not a shocker, of course, that first district of Western Kansas that Marshall is currently a congressman for has been a feeder to the U.S. Senate. Roberts, Moran, Bob Dole, all coming out of that big first district out in Western Kansas. So not a surprise at all. I don't think it moves the needle because Pat Roberts, when's the last time anybody back in Kansas heard from Pat Roberts, saw Pat Roberts? When's the last time he did anything of note on the legislative side? He's kind of just there. Right? So I don't think it's a big deal. And I think in some respects, it could actually backfire because it makes it seem like it's more this kind of establishments on the Marshall campaign, so to speak. Maybe that helps Chris Kobach. But the Bob Hamilton angle here is a really interesting angle because I think he's pulling from both guys. The question is by how much? Yeah,
he surprises me a lot, Bob Hamilton. I didn't think he did well in the debate when I listened to him that first time around, but he is surprising me lately. So maybe something there.
Me too. Bob, I thought the first conversation I had with him was a rough interview, but he's gotten better. We had him on about 3-4 times since then. I think he's gotten better each time I've heard him. He's got the folksy thing down. There's an appeal to businessman, plumber, drain the swamp, go to D.C. He's still very green on the political side. When you say, hey, I want to be on help write the farm bill, but I don't really know how to do that. It's kind of an admission of, I guess it's kind of great that he's so honest, but at the same time, those are the things that you kind of want your U.S. senator to know coming from the state of Kansas. Yep. So I'm intrigued by the Hamilton campaign. I still think he's a distant third by maybe 10 points. But the question is, who does he pull from? Is he pulling more of Kobach supporters who are like, I like Chris's conservative values, but he just can't win? Or is he pulling from the Marshall camp who are like, I don't really care for Marshall or Kobach. I like the guy who's a plumber and who wants to go to D.C. and drain the swamp. And that's going to be, I think, what that election decides. Who does Bob Hamilton take more from?
Absolutely. All right, switching to, let's look at the Missouri governor race. So Mike Parson, the incumbent, say what you will about him. There's lots of things that I could point out that I'm disappointed in with Governor Parson. Just one recent example, Pete, I think he should have come out early with this McCluskey thing and should have supported that family. He hesitated, he hemmed and he hawed. Now he since, he said he's going to pardon them, but it took him a week or two to come out and support that family. What are your thoughts on him, his job? How do you assess it? And then segue into the race.
So I agree with you there, Doug. I think that he took way too long in the McCloskeys. I don't know what took him so long on that. It hurt him with Republican voters in the state, and it made no sense. That was a softball layup thing to do. Yeah. There's no defending the other side on private property, breaking down a fence to get into the neighborhood. There's not two sides of that issue unless you're, really on the far left. So it took him a while, dragged his feet on that. Don't understand why. He did sign Senate Bill 600 a couple of weeks ago, which I thought was a big deal and hopefully will help the violent crime issue on both sides of the state. But I understand some of the critiques. He took a while to shut down the state, which at that point he kind of pissed off both sides because it's like you piss off the side that said you should have shut down earlier. And then you piss off the side that's like, which is your base that says, why are you bothering to shut down? Mm-hmm. What did it prove? In terms of benefits for the state. So he didn't do himself any favors politically at all on how he handled that. But right now, I think given how the last 4 years have gone with obviously the Greitens issue, Parson stepping in, Is Mike Parson, the ideal governor for the state of Missouri? No, I don't believe that he is. But I think right now, with the way the state is set up, you've got the conservative majorities in the House and the Senate down there in Jeff City. Parson will sign, hopefully, the heavy majority of whatever passes. I think that he is the guy that, as the quote-unquote incumbent, is going to run against Nicole Galloway. Nicole Galloway is getting a lot of money from the coasts to try to help out her election on the Democratic side. And there's some polling showing that it's kind of a neck and neck race. Now, I know that Parson's getting primary by a couple of people, probably most notably Sandra McDowell, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. She pulled off a great primary win in 2018 for state auditor. I don't think she's got a shot here in this thing right now. And I think she's super talented politically. I would have loved if she waited until 2022 to run for something, maybe that state auditor seat that she just missed out on in 2018. But I just think right now, with where this is going, my fear is if Galloway were to get into the governor's office, it could be kind of disastrous, and she'd be vetoing a lot of things. So I think right now, Parsons, the safe bet. Is he the ideal Republican governor? No, but I think with where things are right now in the state, you ride with him.
All right, well said. We had Sandra on this show as well, and I echo what you say. I think she's outstanding. I think she would be great. Maybe just not her time yet, but I hope she sticks around. Maybe we'll see her again at some point.
I agree.
All right. Yeah. So Kansas Governor Laura Kelly, yesterday, a big decision from the Kansas State Board of Education, a 5-5 vote, which means they rejected basically her mandate or her proposal to keep all of the schools in the state shut till Labor Day. Your takeaway from that?
I think the board did the right decision, voting that down. Let the local municipalities and the school districts do it how they want to do it. That's how it's done anyway, right? Schools decide when they want to open, when they want their breaks to be. And it's usually uniform across the state in some capacity, but that's how it works anyway. So, there are parts of rural Kansas out west where they've had 0 cases of COVID-19. And there's a handful that have had less than 10 total cases. That's not deaths, that's cases.
Yeah.
And those rural kids, it's tough for them to do any type of at-home learning when, there's no broadband out in some of these parts of the state. So it's not as easy to do as it might be in the Blue Valley School District. So I think that the board did the right thing. And the governor's probably going to get her way in many cases. We already heard this week, Blue Valley is pushing back until September 9th, which is what she wanted to begin with. So I think the urban and suburban areas are probably going to delay it. As long as they get in the classroom, I'm okay with it if it's 2 weeks behind. I don't think that's a huge deal. But I think overturning the governor's executive order was absolutely the right call.
I agree with you completely. And especially because it just, to your point, it allows the districts to make up their own darn mind about this thing. That's how it should be. The one size fits all approach is not a good thing. And, we've got kids' lives really are hanging in the balance, literally and figuratively. You're talking about a lot of kids, student athletes, waiting to get noticed by scouts for the athletic scholarships, academic scholarships, going to college. They can't have the traditional on-site orientation to the college of their choice. And we had a couple of high school students from Olathe South on that last week, a lot of trepidation, and almost all of the high school kids actually do want to go back. They want to get back to school. So, yeah.
How can you blame them? The social side of this as well, Doug, shouldn't be overlooked. Getting a chance to be with your friends. That's important for growth of young people. We cannot view public health through the prism of COVID. We've been doing that for 4 months, and I think it has been a complete failure for this country.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Pete Mundo, the morning talk show host from KCMO Talk Radio, 103.7 FM and 710 AM in Kansas City. Pete, one final comment. First of all, again, thank you for coming on the right side with me this morning. I appreciate it, my friend.
Anytime, Doug.
What do you think, if we look at, our geographic area, the Kansas City metropolitan area, with regards to, the mayor, our director of health, we can talk about, the COVID thing and Lucas and his response to Operation Legend and so forth. But we do in Kansas City have a really serious problem with crime. We haven't had this much crime and serious crime in many, many decades. And I just want to get your take on is it because of the political environment that we're in, that it's an echo of what's going on across the country, or is it a deficiency in what Kansas City's doing?
It's a great question, Doug. And I think maybe this answer sounds political. I don't want it to, but I think it's a little bit of both. When you have a situation that is this dire and is this complex, there's no one thing, but I certainly think you have a perfect storm here of the last few months where, you had an economy get shut down, you had unemployment rise up to 20%, you had 40 million people out of work, and then you have this George Floyd social justice thing that just totally spirals the country even further. And when you have that on top of the fact that 40 million people are not working, I mean, it was already a tinderbox, and you just kind of lit that thing up. And that's how we got to where we are today. So there's a short-term angle to this, and then there's a long-term angle to this. All of these cities, Lori Lightfoot, the Chicago mayor, said that the president with this whole Operation Legend was targeting female mayors. She talked about herself, the mayor of Seattle, the mayor of Atlanta, the mayor of Washington, D.C. That's not true. There's one thing that all these cities have in common. From Seattle to Portland to Kansas City to Chicago to Atlanta to D.C., because there's white men in that group, there's white women in that group, there's black men in that group, and there are black women in that group. And it is the D next to their name. That's what it is. And I don't think Lucas is in that group. I don't think he's in the Ted Wheeler, Lori Lightfoot group. But I think he's got to be careful to not appear like he's part of that group. Because that group will continue to fail its people and fail its cities time and time again. They've been doing it for decades. And I think finally the voters have got to wake up and hold them accountable. And I hope like hell it happens sooner than later, because we all, regardless of what our political ideologies are, we all want to see less people killed on the streets of cities. And we all want to see these people have a shot in life like many of us have had, and a chance to live and pursue the American dream. Nothing would make me happier for anybody in this country, white, black, Asian, Latino, male, female, rich, poor. That's what I want for all of us. And some of these politicians are standing in the way.
Well said. I couldn't have said it better. And, I actually, I don't align with Mayor Lucas politically, obviously, but I mean, he seems to be a genuinely nice guy. I would like to have a beer with him and talk about these. I've tried to get him on the show too, but I think he probably is a very nice guy, and he's got to be careful. I agree with you 100%. He doesn't want to seem like he's in cahoots with Lightfoot, the likes of her and so forth. Absolutely. He
does not, and and you're right. I mean, he is genuinely, he's a good guy. I got to know him when he was running for mayor in 2018, 2019. And I don't believe I probably interviewed the guy, not 100 times, but more than 50. And if you dig into there ideologically, he's not a far left-wing guy. Now, I agree. He and I are going to vote for different presidents, right? There's no doubt about it. But the Democrat Party is now kind of has this divide, and too many are kind of buying into the far left of that party. And my hope is that the mayor does not get sucked up in that politically, because I just don't think that's who he is. And also, it would not be good for the city. Right.
Agreed. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been The Right Side with Doug Billings. Our special guest today, Pete Mundo from KCMO Talk Radio. He's on 103.7 FM on the dial and 710 AM on that AM side. He's on every Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 o'clock. Pete, listen, you didn't have to do this. I appreciate your perspective. I appreciate the favor of you coming on the show. Thank you very much.
Doug, great to be here, and good luck with the show, man. Everything looks great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Doug Billings here at The Right Side. We have a great new graphic. I really like it. Created by a guy by the name of The Commander's Artist. On Twitter, you can find him at TheRealMadDog58. On YouTube, MadDog58. And his website, www.maddog58.com. Look at this artwork. I mean, this guy is incredible. He's a personal friend of General Mike Flynn's, and has sold and traded artwork for some heavy hitters, ladies and gentlemen. Please give him a follow. Check out his artwork. Pick up a couple of prints for yourself. They're awesome. The Commander's Artist. And I'm Doug Billings, here on The Right Side.